So, as we discussed earlier, that in the early 20th centuries there was no sign of antibacterial drugs, unless in that chaos a person applied a dye known as Prontosil in the wound of her infected daughter. This magically cured her wound, and the magic dye was said to be effective in bacterial infections. Well, if we talk a little about Prontosil, then it was said that the azo bond that was present inside it was responsible for the antibacterial activity. But later it was discovered that the sulfonamide bond contained medicinal properties. Well, how did we reach to this conclusion? Basically, azo reduction of this compound was done and it was converted into triaminobenzene and sulfonamide. And when both of these compounds were tested for their medicinal properties, sulfonamide was said to be the antibacterial drugs. So, the sulfonamides were the first drugs found to be effective in the treatment of systemic infections. However, they are now rarely used for bacterial infections because of the development of more effective agents that are less toxic in nature. If we look at the mechanism of action, we will discover that in many microorganisms, dihydrofolic acid is synthesized from para-aminobenzoic acid. So all the sulfonamides currently in clinical use are synthetic analogs of para-aminobenzoic acid, or PABA in short. So because of their structural similarity to PABA, the sulfonamides compete with this substrate for the bacterial enzyme known as dihydroteroate synthetase. They are going to inhibit the synthesis of bacterial dihydrofolic acid and thereby the formation of its essential cofactor forms. The sulfa drugs are usually that's why bacteriostatic. If we talk about spectrum, then sulfa drugs are active against Enterobacteriaceae family in the urinary tract infection and also on the Nocardia species. In addition, sulfadiazine in combination with the dihydrofolate reductase inhibitors, for example pyrimethamine, is the preferred treatment for toxoplasmosis. Sulfadoxine in combination with pyrimethamine is also used as anti-malarial drug. If you talk a little about the pharmacokinetics, then absorption is via oral route of sulfadiazine and via parenteral and oral route of both sulfamethoxazole. After oral administration, most sulfa drugs are well absorbed. An exception is sulfasalazine, and it is not administered orally but in the form of suppository in inflammatory bowel disease. If we talk about the distribution, then sulfa drugs are bound to serum albumin in the circulation, where the extent of binding depends on the ionization constant. They can penetrate very well into the cerebrospinal fluid, even in the absence of the inflammation. They can also pass the placental barrier and enter the fetal tissues. If we talk about the metabolism, the sulfa drugs are acetylated and conjugated primarily in the liver. The acetylated product is devoid of antimicrobial activity but retains the toxic potential to precipitate at neutral or acidic pH. If we talk about excretion, sulfa drugs are eliminated by glomerular filtration and secretion and require dose adjustment for renal dysfunction. And sulfonamides can also be eliminated in breast milk. So, what's left to discuss? Obviously, the adverse events. Adverse events include crystalluria, that means the formation of crystal in the urine. Nephrotoxicity may develop as a result of crystalluria. Inadequate hydration and alkalization of urine can prevent the problem by reducing the concentration of drug and promoting its ionization. Hypersensitivity reactions are also common, such as rashes, angioedema, and Stevens-Johnson syndrome. So when patients report previous sulfa allergies, it is paramount to acquire a description of the reaction to direct appropriate therapy. Hematopoietic disturbances can also occur that include hemolytic anemia, which is encountered in patients with glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Granulocytopenia and thrombocytopenia can also occur. And fatal reactions have been reported from associated agranulocytosis, aplastic anemia, and other blood disorders. Kernicterus can also happen, and which is very common in children and newborn, especially newborn, because sulfa drugs displace bilirubin from binding sites on serum albumin. The bilirubin is then free to pass into the CNS because the blood-brain barrier, or BBB, is not fully developed. Drug potentiation can also take place, where transient potentiation of the anticoagulant effect of warfarin results from the displacement from binding sites on serum albumin. If we talk a little about the contraindications, due to danger of kernicterus, sulfa drugs should be avoided in newborns and infants less than 2 months. Also the pregnant woman as well. Sulfonamide should not be given to patients receiving methenamine as well. So this was all about the sulfonamides. Stick around with us and let's talk about trimethoprim next.